Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today, and welcome back to tonight's second half. Before we jump into tonight's video and encounter-packed second half, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, it takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go, and folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's second half, shall we? Alright guys, I am going to throw in some video clips that I like. I'm not going to give you my decision on them because I don't have one. And my decision or opinion doesn't matter. Your guys' is what matters. So I'm just going to share a couple before the upload and then some after the upload. So there'll be about 5 to 6 video clips to enjoy, and just set this bonus upload off right, and then in a couple hours the second half, and then in a little bit after that the live stream. Let's do it. Today's first encounter. I was born in a tiny town in Ohio that borders the Ohio River in West Virginia in 1979. I have one brother who is 2 years older than me. We'll just call him Charlie. My mom left my dad in 1983, and she moved me and Charlie to a small town in the Rocky Mountains. We had to stay at a hotel our first few days there, but it ended up being only one night before my mom got us out of this place because of what happened. We didn't arrive at the hotel until dark. Even when we got into the place, I was noticing energy was different than anything I had ever felt before. I remember telling my mom I didn't want to stay there, and both Charlie and my mom laughed and said it'll be okay. The place was small, it felt compact, and like the walls were closing in on you because it was built in 1879. I have the proof, I did the research, which was exactly 100 years before I was born. Kind of cool, I guess. Either way, our room was on the second floor. It overlooked an Amtrak railway and the Colorado River. It was right at the bottom of our town. The place was originally built for low-income housing, and boy, it was still cheap. Even in my teenage years, I think the price of a room there was about $30. Cheap, run down, and dirty. My mom was getting us and herself ready for bed. I think my brother and I were going to pick out a board game to play while my mom got herself ready as well. Our room had a bathroom, which most of the rooms did not. They had to share one at the end of the hall. The lights were dim in the room as well. Only a lamp by the bed was on, not even the bathroom light. My mom was washing her face in the sink, and as Charlie and I were messing around like kids do, he said, "Stop, listen." We both focused in on what she was doing and started to hear sort of growling, very low, angry growling. My mom had her face in the sink and was now violently splashing water onto her face, which seemed like it took literally forever. Then swung her head up, stood up straight, and looked at her own reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were open really wide and her mouth was grinning, but not with a happy grin. I mean, baring all her teeth, and then started to laugh. This is where things got super freaky, if that's not freaky enough for you already. I mean, my mom was pretty nice. Still looking in the mirror, she looks over at us sitting on the bed through the reflection. She starts laughing harder and growling even more now. It didn't sound anything like her. She turned around and faced us. And it wasn't her anymore. It was a reptilian man that stood about 9 feet tall. It didn't have clothes on that I could see, but my brother and I both saw its features in detail. Scaly green skin, bright orange or yellow eyes, bright red around its mouth. Not sure if I want to call those lips. Extremely sharp and pointed teeth, long, sharp black talons, not fingernails. These were thick. And long black curly hair. It was horrifying. My brother and I started screaming at the top of our lungs. I hid behind him and started crying uncontrollably. I've never felt fear like that since then or after, and I'm 41. Although I've had innumerable experiences with other things. I'd say it got halfway to the bed where we were sitting, and it was talking to us, more like growling and grunting at us, and telling us how hungry it was and how tasty we were going to be. I kept screaming and screaming and screaming, and trying not to open my eyes, because every time I did, it was still there, getting a little closer each time I opened them. My brother had a hold of me as well, and probably was screaming just as loud. Once it got halfway to us, we heard an extremely loud knock at the door. "Is everything okay in there? Hello, hello." They knocked for a minute or two, and Charlie and I were looking at the door. We turned to look at the thing, and it was gone. My mother just stood there in a complete daze, like, what the hell just happened? In total shock, she ran over to us and hugged us, and asked if we were okay and was crying. I was still crying, of course. I was a little kid, and my mom just turned into this thing that I can't explain. Charlie was crying as well. She hugged us and Said, "I promise I'll never do that again, I promise." She had her face in my neck, and I thought, monster. She started to growl, and I started crying again, but she laughed and stopped. Promise, last time. She got up and answered the door and explained there was a mouse, sorry for all the noise, all the while the sink was still running. It was raining pretty hard that night. Come to think about it, we left the next morning, and Charlie and I spoke about this for years. Hell, we even interrogated our mom about it for years. Would never get a straight answer. The only answer she would give was, "I don't want to talk about that." Not, "What are you talking about?" or "That was a dream," or "We need to get you tested for schizophrenia." None of it. Just, "I don't want to talk about that." When I was 13, my brother literally forgot it happened. He didn't remember one single thing about it until literally this past year when I talked with him about it again. He started remembering, as I told the story to him. He had forgotten for over 25 years, erased from his memory. Well, when I was 17, she did talk about it. I asked her one night, and she explained everything. She said she felt like something entered her and took her over. She didn't remember anything until she was standing there in a daze, except darkness and trying to reach us, keep us safe. Then she said something that confirmed everything. But I never did it again, did I? The hotel has been demolished and rebuilt. It's now a massage parlor, which is kind of funny, because it used to be a whorehouse, a speakeasy. And then low-income housing back to a massage parlor? Now, my question, can reptilians possess someone? Was she a reptilian? I have not heard of any demons that are green like that, and can't find a picture or even a rendition of anything like it resembled. Just to be clear, I am of sound mind. I do not see reptilians or reptile people on a regular basis, although that image has been burnt into my memory forever. Edit. Last night, per overwhelming requests, I did ask my mom about it, or what could have happened, or if she was just a downright witch. First, she got mad and made that huffing noise that she makes when she doesn't like something of hers. Then, "Why are you dredging this up?" "I don't know, Mom, because it scared me like nothing I've ever felt before or after, and I'm a little curious about it. And it happened to me." She got mad and hung up on me. Oh well, I'll probably try again another time, but at this point, that's all I got. Update, I just talked to my mom again. We apologized to each other, and she actually gave me another bit of info that kind of creeped me out. I'm actually turning this into a book because it's way more complex than just this incident. And explained to her that I was writing a book and needed clarification. She explained the main character, Charlie, was me. That's my grandfather's name. I never met him. Died before I was born. She said I should have named the thing that because that's who it reminded her of, pure evil. I asked if it could have been him, but honestly, I'm not sure because of this location. Normally, I usually wait till the end, but this was a very interesting, terrifying, very traumatic encounter. I'm almost wondering if the person's mom was a reptilian, had the two boys, and then the gene or genes maybe passed on because of the human side. Maybe she bred with a human, who knows? Or maybe, just maybe, he is a reptilian or she is a reptilian, because I don't know the sex of the person. And they just don't know it yet. It's definitely a terrifying encounter for a small child to have. I mean, it's creepy for me just to read it, so What do you guys think? The other day, a couple days ago, I did a very terrifying Dogman encounter out in West Virginia, Spruce Knob, West Virginia to be exact. There is a similar case in the almost same spot that happened. So we're going to revisit the first and then go to the second. My husband, son, and I went camping in rural West Virginia, kind of traveling around other parts of the state we didn't get to go often. We live in Eastern Panhandle, but the places we camped were in Grant Hardy County, Pendleton County, Lost River area, and Spruce Knob, closer to the middle of the state. We camped Friday through Monday and had no cell service the whole time. Anyway, our second night, we set up at Spruce Knob National Forest. It's not a campsite. It's a fire ring we found on a good hike from a long, quiet, sparsely populated country road. So not serious backpacking, but not populated by any means. People occasionally drive up to see the overlook, but after sunset, we generally hear no cars and could not see or hear evidence of other campers nearby, not even a distant campfire. We got in our tent maybe 9, 10 o'clock, and about 30 minutes later my husband describes this primal, overwhelming fear, sense that something is off. So he's wide awake, and so was our son. The tent flap rain cover moved or made an odd but quiet rustle, then suddenly he sees a human-like figure standing right next to our tent, like close, a silhouette, an imposing stance, and tall. Like staring into the dark tent, looking down at us inside. It just appeared. There were no sounds like a bear or a person would make approaching the tent, except for possibly the wind moving our rain cover, which was very quiet and odd, not someone walking up. My husband yells, "Hey, hey!" claps his hands, because maybe it is a bear, and his first thought was to scare it off. It wasn't moving around. It was very still, not swaying with a pretty non-existent gentle wind like a tree moving or how eye tricks would appear. It was just standing there. It hung around for a few more seconds after my husband made the noise. Then it just kind of evaporated or vanished. Still no sound. Like a good horror movie. He got out and looked around with a flashlight, still yelling, clapping, looking around. He found no disturbances, no tracks, no rustling or any other noise. Just simply gone. Now I know it's very possible this was some kind of trick of the eye. We always feel very safe in these woods. We know him well. So him having that fear response immediately before seeing this or hearing the rain flap is unusual. He doesn't just get creeped out for no reason. We're built with instincts, so we should trust them. Always based on where the moon was, waning crescent, offering very little light, not enough to create a silhouette, and our campfire was out. Plus, this thing was close to the woods on the back side of the tent. So even if our campfire was going, the angle would be all wrong to create that illusion. It's bothering us because there's not really a good explanation. I want to reiterate, we never get bad vibes while camping like this. We're experienced in the woods, and I'm always armed. I so wish I had just snapped a pic or something, but panicking about a bear, scary axe, murderer, ghost, whatever, taking a pic didn't cross our minds. It was all too quick anyway. Felt like forever, but this was probably only a good 60 to 90 seconds. So, Mothman? Anyone had anything similar? We may be going back next weekend because, other than our visitor, we had so much fun. And it was really a lovely camp spot. Or would that be pushing our luck? This is not this family's update, but this happened in almost the same location. October 10th through 11th, 2020. I was on a backpacking excursion with one other person. We were in the Seneca Creek Spruce Knob backcountry in West Virginia. What was supposed to be a 3-day, 2-night, 16-mile outing turned into a day-and-a-half, 20-mile mistake, thanks to terrible weather and, admittedly, some poor decision-making on our part. That Sunday, we ended up hiking 18 miles to get back to the trailhead. The last 5 miles was in torrential rain in the dark on the Huckleberry Trail, for all those familiar. About 3 miles before we reached the trailhead, I started to hear loud branches crackling to the left of me. I was leading, if that matters. It was easy to blame it on the weather, but the further we walked, the louder and closer it seemed to get. It was almost as though I could hear heavy footsteps, but again, the wind and rain were torrential, so who knows. I kept quickly turning towards the tree with my headlamp illuminating the thick spruce trees, hoping I'd see something, but I never caught a sight of anything. About half a mile from the trailhead, I suddenly realized that I no longer had the feeling of being watched, and the noise I had been hearing had ceased. If anything, the weather had gotten worse, so at that point I was feeling even more like it wasn't weather-related. If I had to guess, the feeling of being followed went on for a little over 2 miles. For context, I'm an avid hiker in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania area, and have been for years. 99.9% of the time I hike alone. This was the first time in years of hiking that I ever felt like I was being watched or followed while hiking. I am a female, if that matters. So the next day, after I was home and had time to process how terrible the whole trip had been, it hit me that what I felt was that we were being escorted out of the woods. Given the terrible weather, we hadn't passed anyone for miles. Not another soul seemed to be out there, and all of the campsites we passed were vacant. I never felt like we were in danger per se, but my feeling was that something wanted to make sure we left the backcountry. Again, to clarify, I never actually saw or smelled anything. It was all the noises and feelings, and I never felt like we were in any kind of danger. I just felt uneasy. I didn't mention this to my hiking partner, mostly because I had made an offhand joke about Bigfoot hours earlier, and she became very serious about annihilating people who thought Bigfoot was real. I knew there wouldn't be any support there. I made the joke when she said she heard bongo drums out of nowhere. I didn't hear that sound, although a few times I did hear what I thought were wood knocks. One final thing to know is that I had an experience about 30-ish miles north of here in Davis, West Virginia, back in 2013. I was driving with somebody about 1:30 in the morning on the way to a cabin. As we rounded a curve, I swear I saw a Bigfoot on the side of the road, headed up an embankment into the woods. He stopped briefly when illuminated by the headlights. I remember thinking he looked so startled. I also remember immediately thinking, wow, he's a lot shaggier than I thought he would be. The hair/fur was deep auburn color. My friend happened to be looking down at her phone, but I screamed and slammed on my brakes. I remember actually shaking and being unable to verbalize to her what I had seen. I couldn't believe what I thought I saw. That encounter lasted no more than 3 seconds. These are the only 2 instances of potential encounters that I have had in my life. I'm wondering if anyone has similar experiences in Seneca Creek Spruce Knob area or anywhere in that area. Or if you think it's possible this could have actually been a Bigfoot making sure we left the woods. Today's third encounter. I think I was about 4 years old. I know this because at the time we were living in Clovis, New Mexico, and I was in my first ever big girl bed, no railings and not a crib. We did move to a different state before I turned 5. My mom maintains that the house we lived in at the time was built on Native American burial ground. I don't know if that's true, and Mom always reports a lot of paranormal happenings during those 4 years. I remember very little, the massive sky because the land was so flat over there and the white stone gate that surrounded our garden. I don't really have any memories before this time. There are things I know because of pictures and stories, but this is my first ever living, feeling, terrifying memory. I remember waking up from my sleep in the middle of the night to a low growl. At the end of my bed, the red eyes of a very large black dog burned into the darkness, glaring at me as it snarled. But the dog was not quite a dog. It's hard to describe because it was physically a dog. I could also see a man's eyes staring at me, as if wearing a mask or illusion of a dog, if that makes sense. I'm now 29, but the memory has remained vivid. I remember my pink sheets, the dark room, the red eyes, and terror. I don't remember what happened next, and I assumed for a long time that it was just a really bad nightmare I had as a little girl. I never really mentioned it. I didn't really understand it at the time, and my childhood became pretty complicated soon thereafter. However, when I was about 13, I started telling my mom about it, sort of out of the blue, on one of the nighttime bike rides we used to occasionally go on together. And she immediately became really animated as she claimed to have seen the same exact thing in that house at the end of her bed. Only she didn't think it was a man in a dog-like skin, but just a big black dog with glowing red eyes. About 10 years later, while getting high with one of my brothers, we were talking about supernatural stories, and I brought it up again. He asked me to retell the story, and then told me that it sounded a lot like something he had come across while looking up different tribal beliefs in America, something called the Skinwalker. We spent the rest of that night finding out what we could have about them, but there was surprisingly little information out there about them beyond a description and a few stories here and there. My family settled in the UK a while ago, and we have just entered a second lockdown. I'm out of a job, so I find myself with a bunch of free time, chasing up on things that I push to the back of my mind. So I'm pretty skeptical in general. I think it's likely I had a nightmare. I had a lot of nightmares as a kid, and still do sometimes, like screaming myself awake nightmares, to my embarrassment. However, what makes me take pause is that my mom saw it as well. And beyond that, at 4 years old in the mid-90s, I doubt I had ever heard of anything like what I saw. It just seems a little implausible that I would come up with something so closely matching this thing that has been talked about for hundreds of years and is still being talked about today. But supposing I put my skepticism to one side, 3 things really bug me. 1. Every other story I have read about skinwalkers seem to hinge on the fact that they are not able to get into your home, and the story narrator always seems to think that the very worst will happen if they do. Well, mine is totally in my house, visited 2 different bedrooms, and just snarled and stared and scared the shit out of us. 2. If I'm honest, life for my family got pretty hard after that. We were very unlucky. A devastating death, horrible sudden illnesses that was never recovered from, drug and alcohol abuse, attacks on the family, and more. Honestly, it was a really bad downward spiral. Sometimes I wonder. 3. I've read in a couple places that you should never lock eyes with one, as it could take control of your body or be absorbed into you. We definitely locked eyes. There was really nowhere else to look. Being in front of those eyes made me feel like a deer in front of headlights, frozen and staring back. So yeah, I have questions. I sort of want to go searching. I sort of want to just forget about it. I sometimes wonder if I'm cursed. Thanks. Any thoughts? Today's 4th terrifying encounter. I've been stewing on this story for a while, not gonna lie. I had a few drinks, so pardon the errors. And rambling. Not a great storyteller. This takes place in New York, midsummer. It was my best friend's last day at his old house, which was filled with weird shit. I've experienced stuff there, and have a few experiences that can be boiled down to ghosts all the way to feeling like my life was in danger, which is why I refused to spend the night there, as was when the feeling came. So this was their last day at that old house, getting all their stuff to the new house I was helping. All I remember from that day was walking in the house, seeing the windows filled with dead flies, like more than I thought a house could have, and then driving to their new house at night, which had to be at least 8 hours of missing time. I was confused and asked them, "Where are we?" and was told we were in bumfuck nowhere town. On the way to the new house, I said, "But we never got the rest of your stuff." My friend's brother looked at me concerned and said, "Yeah, we did." "What happened?" I said, and was just told that they would tell me later. This is a story best come from their mouth, as I can't remember it. Just 8 hours, poof, gone, and only their word on what happened. All they said was I was very quiet the whole time when shit went down in that house. We were driving, and we noticed that there are no other cars on the road, which is strange as we were going through quite a few small towns. And it's still early at night on a Friday. The little brother mentions this, and as soon as he does, a bunch of cars come around the corner at this point. It's just circumstance, but there will be a pattern. We keep driving, and we notice all the houses are completely empty. Like lights are on, but we see nothing in them, no furniture, nothing. I mention this, and boom, next house we notice people just standing in the window, staring at our car. We notice this for the next 3 to 4 houses. At this point, we're shitting bricks, and notice this drive is taking way too long. They only move a few towns over, and this drive is taking well over an hour, and it feels like we're driving in a cornfield for a while. My friend says, "What the fuck is going on? We should almost be there by now." Lo and behold, the cornfield ends, and we recognize where we are again. Seeing a pattern yet? Because I didn't. And I said something I regret to this day. Man, what other weird shit is going to happen tonight? As soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew I fucked up, and my friend and his brother start yelling at me, saying, "Why would you say that?" And we get in a yelling match. We never argue, and my friend slams on the brakes. In front of us is what I can only describe as a big, cat-like size of a person with a head of an owl. This, whatever it was, struck so much damn fear into the 3 of us. His little brother, a 20-year-old dude who played football, just started crying, and I was on the edge of going insane. I want to be in the future scientific career. This shit was not making no sense at all. My friend just stared at it until he said, "Someone grabbed their phone." His battery was dead from the time he was in the old house. This woke me up, and I went to grab my phone, and this, whatever, ran into the field, into the darkness as soon as I started pulling it out. So we finally get to the new house. We pulled into the driveway and back into their parking space when his brother says, "What the hell is that?" We look up and see what I can only say looked like a pure white Bigfoot crawling around like a spider. It had red eyes, and it just crawls away into the forest. We sit in the car for 45 minutes until their mother arrives. No drugs or alcohol were taken that night. Well, unto after we got into that new house. The best logical conclusion I can come up with was there was a CO2 leak in their old house, and we were having a group hallucination. This is by far the weirdest day of my life. Sorry if this is too weird for you guys. I mention this now because my friend said new owners of the old house have a for sale sign on it right now. They were there for less than 2 years. I was told that they had a thriving daycare there for about 1.5 years and suddenly closed it down. Okay, can't save this for later. I don't think that it was a group hallucination because they all saw the same thing. I don't know what the hell happened, but I know they saw 2 terrifying cryptid-like creatures that night. And I live in New York, and I want to know where this happened because now I'm freaking creeped out. Today's last encounter. This encounter happened in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe last year while a father and son were on their way to Bulawayo late at night. The son was driving, as he had recently got his driver's license. They were coming from a housing project. The father had won the contract where they were surveying a land. Naturally, they were excited for the project, so the mood was extremely good. As they were traveling along, they heard a loud pop, and the car suddenly swerved to the side of the road. It was a blown tire. Luckily, no one was hurt, and the car wasn't too badly damaged. Where they had stopped was in the middle of nowhere and seemed to be unnaturally silent. They set about changing the tire, feeling nervous for some reason. That good feeling had gone away. They had left the headlights of the car on so as to have some light. With the light they were using, they could see shadows moving around them in the car. They started hearing heavy, deep growling. The father kept his cool for the son's sake as he started freaking out. "Just keep working on changing that tire," said the father, and he frantically finished. They got into the car, and they saw 4 pairs of goldish yellow eyes just on the edge of darkness. The son floored the accelerator, and they sped off, but to their horror, those eyes started following them, matching their speed. One of the creatures ran past the car, only to reveal something they never thought possible. It was running on all 4 legs, moving unlike anything they'd ever seen. It looked at them, and they saw the head of a wild dog with large fangs. It was built like a lean, fit basketball player with well-defined muscles. They realized in the instant that they were being hunted. He pressed the accelerator to the end, praying and hoping that the car was fast enough to lose them. As the car passed the creature, it suddenly and fluidly stood up to reveal that it was 7 feet tall and had hands like claws. It reached out for the car before the car accelerated away from them. As soon as they knew they were somewhere safe, the father broke down and cried. It was a mixture of relief and shock.
That's not human. It's not a human. The face is here at first, but no. That is not a human.
Oh my god. Alright folks, there you have it. Some very horrifying encounters and some of my favorite video clips. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, please remember this, because I will never stop saying it. You guys are the foundation of this platform. Your support is what makes this channel truly special, and I do appreciate it. With that being said, please everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on your children, your family, your loved ones, your pets. These creatures are real, we know that. God bless you all.